for being with us.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the introduction, Rigor. Let me just share my screen here first. And there, I hope you can see what I'm seeing.
We can, I think.
You can.
Looks good.
I hope you also can hear me. So let me know if that's not the case. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this proposal, which you've already done a good job, I think, convincing people that it might be a good idea to do an application about these topics. But the proposal, I can just say that it sort of grew out of both our successes at VIVE with using AI and machine learning, and our frustrations with doing it. And also about the discussions we've had in the network of how to fund INSIA going forward. And yeah, so I hope my idea with this presentation is to convince you that it would be a good idea to do such an application. And I have two pictures here on the first slide, which I think symbolizes sort of my hopes for what this application could do. And to the left there, you can see what the large language model Mistral thinks that the evidence synthesis process looks like. So very high-tech, scientific, little kind of boring maybe. And on the right picture that you can see, that's my office, where I do actual work on evidence synthesis. And yeah, thanks to my daughter and my niece and my nieces and my nephew, it looks a little bit more creative, more fun, but sort of as an illustration of the evidence synthesis process, I think it's false in that. So a lot of this process is just consists of a lot of repetitive, boring, and time-consuming tasks that are to a large extent still low-tech. You do it by hand, basically. And so the idea here is to automate part of that process, that is making it more high-tech, could then free up resources and time to do something that's more creative and fun, that is analyzing data, for example. So I hope that's where this can lead us to. Let's see. So I can change pictures, slides too. Very short outline. I was just going to talk a little bit about the background motivation for why this might be a good idea, and then basically present a laundry list of topics that could be included, mostly just to show you that there are stuff that we can do. And then we'll have a discussion at the end, and I don't think I'll talk more than 15-20 minutes, so there'll be room for discussion at the end. All right, so why is now a good time to apply for funding for automating the evidence synthesis process? So I think there are at least two trends that makes evidence synthesis both more expensive and more difficult to conduct. So the first and most important of those trends is that research production seems to be on an ever-increasing trend. And at least in the fields that I work in, it's increased tremendously just over the last couple of years. And if you look at our searches, they become bigger and bigger, starting 5 to 10 years ago, I think. And I think the second trend that's also problematic is that, well, the prevalence of bad scientific practices and fraud seems to have increased as well. I don't know how it is with you, but I get several emails a day from less than serious publisher that wants me to publish in their engineering journals and so on, whereas I'm very far from an engineer. But it takes time to pick out the real stuff from the bad stuff, basically, and that it seems to be getting worse. So hopefully, a third trend, that is the improvements in machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other technological advancement could help us in this regard. And while I think it's already clear that the potential is there to automate many parts of the evidence synthesis process, I think there's still quite a lot of knowledge that we lack on when to use it, in what context, and when it works and when it doesn't work. And there are also still areas that completely lack tools, but where there should be possible to do, I think. And then a third thing that I think is perhaps more trickier, but I'll talk a little bit more about it soon, is how to both organize and fund the maintenance of tools that are actually already well performing. I don't think there are good modes of organizing that at the moment, but maybe we can help there. So yeah, could INSIA contribute to the maintenance, development, and testing of tools and methods? So my answer is, of course, yes. We could, but probably not within the our current funding. But so at least as users and producers of evidence synthesis, I think it's clear that INSIA have an interest in making this process more efficient, and AI, machine learning, and other techniques could help us there. So a second motivation for making an application is that I don't know all of the member organizations well enough to say that this is the case for everyone, but at least for VIVE and some of the other organizations, it's not the case that we already have a lot of funding for maintaining, developing, and testing these types of methods and tools. So it would be okay to ask funders for such resources, basically. Like that should be an opportunity, and it would be hard for them to say that we already have this funding. And I think the third argument for why we should do it as INSIA, or at least together, is that the network aspect here is quite crucial, that most of these tasks, as Rigmor said, are too big for any of our organizations. At least they're at least too big for VIVE. And I think it's also the case that we represent not exactly the same fields, and that would be an advantage in many of these ideas and topics that we could apply about. So the idea is not only to apply for funding for doing maintenance, developing, and testing, but also funding the network itself. So, for example, we could apply for funding for co-funding of the secretariat, sort of things. Moving over to what we could apply for, I just want to mention some caveats first. So, this is just a list of topics that we have been discussing at VIVE. It's not the case that any of them have to be including. It's just, as I said, a laundry list that we could do some of them. And I think it would definitely be very interesting to hear from all of you what you think should be added to such a list, or what other people in your organization think should be added. But the list, I think, is already too long that you cannot write about all of these things. But I think a good way of doing it is just get everything up on the table and then try to prioritize. And as Rigmor said, there's a lot of ongoing work in this area, and we should prioritize areas where we can contribute. I have not done my homework in that sense, that I haven't looked through everything that's going on. And in particular, I know there have been large scale grants being handed out to research group quite recently. And if we decide on doing an application, we need to look at those things. I haven't done those now, so it might be that there's a topic on this list that you know about, have already been solved, and so on. But then just tell me. And I framed the ideas here as maintaining, developing, and testing methods and tools. And that's not something that, maybe not the best way of framing it, but that's what I have right now. Right. So starting here with maintaining tools, I think there's an interesting organizational problem there, is that at least if you look at open source tools, maintenance is done by people developing the tools first. And I mean, this is not really something that people get paid for. It's a bit of a thankless task, at least for researchers, who doesn't necessarily get any citation. They get citations, but not that many publications and so on. So it might be difficult to keep interest in maintaining these tools, and everyone retires at some point. So it's hard to see, actually, for me, how this organization, what we want to call it, of tool maintenance, how it could ever be sustainable. And I have two more concrete examples of the problems here. And so the first comes from our own trials, where we've been looking for tools that could help us do citation tracking, or snowballing, or citation chasing. and where we found quite a few tools that at some point, I guess, worked well because they were developed and are out there, but some of them we couldn't get to work at all. And others had like fairly obvious flaws that could have been made them very useful if they just have been developed a little bit more, but doesn't seem like development is going on right now. So there are already examples of tools that at one point probably worked quite well, but which doesn't anymore. And my second example there is from one of our own tools where Mikkel Wemby and other colleagues have developed a tool called AIscreenR. It's an open source tool that combines OpenAI's GPT API models and R, and can do title and abstract screening. I'm not going to tell you a lot more about the tool because Mikkel will be giving a seminar partly about this tool in June. I think an INSIA webinar is planned for June. But very briefly, this tool can screen around 25,000 abstracts and titles in a day for $1.50, and it can do it on par with one human screener in all of the trials we've done. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it is as good as 2 human screeners. So it's has the potential of making title and abstract screening both faster and better, basically. However, maintaining this tool is not easy because these models that we're using, the large language models, they change all the time. And keeping up with this development requires quite a bit of resources and also some specialized skills. That's not something that VIVE typically has, and it's not something that we have long-term funding for. So how we're going to solve this, I don't know. But we hope that anyway, other people can help as well, basically. So applying for funding for maintenance of existing tools, and I think thinking about how to organize the maintenance would be an interesting part of an application. Going forward, here are some examples of developments that I have not seen anyone else do so much of right now. So one thing that could be used is instead of using OpenAI's models, you can use local or downloadable large language models instead. And that would have a few advantages. So one of them would be just taking care of this problem that I just talked about, that like the off-the-shelf local language models, they develop all the time. So you might have created a well-functioning workflow that incorporates one of these models, and then the model is changed and the workflow doesn't work anymore, which has happened to us. But if you have your own model that's just downloaded, and if it works well, you don't have to develop it any further. So that wouldn't need to happen, basically. But whether that can be done or not, we don't know. And the second advantage will be that, well, it's not so easy to be transparent or reproducible of how these models work because they change all the time. So going back a few months is possible, but not further. And reviews take a lot longer than that. So it's very, very hard to document what was done and with which model and so on, and definitely not possible to reproduce the results as it is now. That would be possible with a local. Furthermore, well, while there are often, I think, results about AI and machine learning methods that look promising, it's sometimes hard to know whether they worked in your specific projects. So thinking about how to benchmark tools and so that researchers can do it in their own projects, I think is an important part of developing methods and tools. And I think Mikkel and colleagues did a very good job of that in the paper they have given out about the AIscreenR, where they have developed such benchmark. But that could be done for a lot of other methods too. The third point there, database extraction and pre-processing of large searches. Well, that basically comes from our experience with since we have AIscreenR, we can do very large searches because we can handle a lot of the sorting of relevant and irrelevant records in the screening phase rather than in the search phase. However, currently databases have limits on how many hits you can download. And if you're downloading several hundred thousands of files, it becomes difficult to just handle them. And you need to be able to sort them somehow. And exactly how that should be done, I don't think has been solved, even though we've worked around it in the projects where we used it so far. But I think even larger searches will be motivated, given that we can handle them in the screening phase. The last point there, web scraping or full text PDF. That is when you know which you've done your title and abstract screening, you want to look at the full text. And what we do now is that we manually go to each publisher, each journal, and downloads this. That takes a lot of time. We know that we can do this. Technically, we can do it by web scraping. We have our own prototype, and there's also commercially available prototypes in, for example, Zotero. However, publishers, it's unclear if we are allowed to do this for many of them. I think it's only Wiley that's actually writing that it is okay to web scrape. And whereas, for example, for Elsevier, it is not allowed to web scrape PDFs, but other formats which are not usable to us. And it's highly unclear why this is the case, why it's different between publishers, and why some allowed and why some don't. But I think it would be worth working on together, trying to convince publishers that this is a good idea and that they should allow us to do it, basically. So that's just a purely methods development rather than a tool. The tools are already there. And lastly, some examples of methods and tools that could be tested more, I think. But the first point there, I think it would be very interesting to test a traditional search where you try to balance resources against number of hits, and where a librarian or an information specialist develop the search with those two, with that balance in mind. Whereas a new AI and machine learning enhanced search and screening could then do much of that balancing, or much of that the sorting in the screening phase rather than in the search phase. So I think we have done some trials regarding this, mainly because we had to, because we found out that searches that we had done were too narrow. And that sort of seems to indicate that there, at least in some applications, would be large advantages to doing this AI and machine learning enhanced search and screening, but we don't know. We don't know, and this is way too big of a task for VIVE to do, and would definitely need a lot more people and a lot more organizations to do that. I think when it comes to fraud and fault detection, there are a lot of tools out there, but from what I understand, many of them haven't been tested rigorously, and more so, they're not really incorporated in many workflows. So we don't have any of these tools incorporated in our workflows, at least, and maybe you've come further there, and that would be interesting to hear. But I'm not aware of like how-to guides with these types of tools, which would be interesting to develop or test. Methods for how to combine AI and ML tools. What I mean by that is that a lot of testing or development in terms of, for example, priority screening, sort of implicitly assume that priority screening is the only machine learning tool you're using. But I don't think that has to be the case anymore. So for example, should recommendations for stopping rules priority screening change when you can basically run AIscreenR or something similar on all your abstracts, so you don't have to stop completely. You can always look at everything, no matter how big the search is, basically. I know there's a lot of work going on when it comes to AI-aided full-text screening, data extraction, and risk of bias assessment. But I think there might be room for even more testing there, and how that, especially, for example, it would be interesting to learn more about how, whether if you use AI to extract data from your full text, how does that affect the quality of the review? Because I at least feel that when I do data extraction, I learn a lot about my source material that I hope makes my review better in the end. And if an AI did that for me, would I then learn as much? I don't know, but it would be interesting to test. And the last part there, understanding the role of model fine-tuning. That's basically some new technical possibilities that have come up quite recently, that you can fine-tune your model for the task at hand, your large language model for your task at hand. So it might be that the results, for example, that we've gotten with AIscreenR could be made even better if we actually trained the large language model to do title and abstract screening. Now we're just using the model as it is. But that's something we at least don't know anything about yet. We haven't really tried it. Right. I think that was all I wanted to say. So I'll stop sharing and thank you for your attention. And then should I leave it to you, Rigmor, to lead the discussion?
I need to take care of an issue here for a few minutes. My proposal would be that we open it up for just general discussions, and then towards the end of, we have about half an hour left, let's try to focus it on sort of next steps. But anybody's willing to, welcome to offer their viewpoints, what they think would be a viable, interesting way forward, what we should focus our energies on first, perhaps. So I'll be right back.
Get the conversation going, I could just maybe ask if, well, is this something that sounds remotely interesting for your organizations to be a part of, or what do you think?
Mike, go ahead, Susanne.
Shall I start? Okay. I'm Susanna Larsson Tholén, and I work at SBU, and I'm new in this AI INSIA group. I believe this is a very interesting proposal. It's difficult to know exactly how we can contribute and how much time and effort we can put in this effort, but in this project. But we have recently gained a government assignment to develop a process for rapid reviews in crisis. And it seems obvious that in developing such a process, we need to consider AI. And still we don't really, we just started, so we don't know how. And I guess the focus for us will be at the process, and maybe we will try out some of the already existing softwares that have AI built in. But of course, we are interested in development as well. Even if I can't see for the moment how SBU will do this development thing, but that's some thoughts from SBU.
Thank you. Thank you, Vance, for the VIVE perspective on the AI use in systematic review or literature review at all. Right now at INES, it's a HEA agency in Quebec, Montreal, and in Canada. And we looking across the spectrum for the HTA. So how we could use AI for search query for the literature review, how we could just test and pilot some search query and look at what could be done there toward the end of the spectrum to the synthesis of the but in fact, in our position, we are affected by the regulatory issues there, the authorship issues, etc. So we try to learn more about what you call, for example, the problem that you have to web sourcing the PDF and etc. So we have that kind of problem, but we not just for the search for the PDF, but also for how we could use the abstract and full text in large model language model to come up with the selection for the review process and the selection of the article, and after this the extraction, etc., etc. So you have this kind of problem that we right now. I don't think my colleagues, maybe Lisanne will jump in the conversation, but and my other colleagues are more fun on AI and authorship issue. But right now it's like not quite stopping us, but it's really it's a fundamental issue for us as a public organization. I see hands, so maybe you could answer more because you work also. I think Hans, you have exchange with Catherine Olivier from my organization to really uh, try to really see what could be done right now. I think also HAS has tried some tests over there, and I will be really interesting to heard from their experience also. But right now we kind of see opportunity from all the spectrum of the review process. Also an opportunity for other methods like economic methods or for qualitative research process or participatory research process. So it's all opportunities there, but it's as we see it, we also have obstacles to go and test and really try something new there.
May I ask a follow-up question, Olivier? I was just curious when you say issues of authorship. Can you explain a little bit more about how AI and automation comes in terms of authorship? Or, for example, I'm thinking, are you wondering whether to and how to include something like ChatGPT as author in an evidence synthesis, or?
No, it's more about it. Maybe it's my English this morning for me. It's not quite on point, but it's more about to use to respect the rules of authorship from the databases and big editors like Elsevier, and how we could search their databases and use their articles and their journals within a space where AI will do tests. And if it's a model that is public, like ChatGPT, use this information, but we don't have the right to put those information, those databases, because of the authorship issue from Elsevier and big editors over there. So I think that every university and academic and HEA agency try it on anyway, but we when we have to do reports for the government and as a public organization and as all the rules that structure our work, it's kind of difficult to advance serenely, like with peace in mind.
Thanks for explaining. That makes perfect sense. And it does go back a little bit to what Jens said about web scraping and how some publishing houses allow that and some publishing houses don't. So I think one issue we will run into, an aspect that we'll have to deal with when it comes to whatever project we may initiate, is the judicial of, for example, web scraping. So in the general case, traditionally, what one does is to try to obtain the full text of whatever study is included, whether you have to pay for it or you order it or it's available online, but you try to obtain it some way or another. And it's difficult for me to see why it's different that I, as a human being, goes into and pays for a full text or downloads something that's already available online as a full text, whether I or I use something like web scraping, it's obtaining it no matter what. So perhaps part of the judicial aspect here is the payment. Yeah, the conversation about web scraping or obtaining full texts, but just a couple of reflections related to what Olivier just said. And I probably don't need to say it, but please jump in. This is an open conversation among colleagues. We're brainstorming, we're airing our ideas and thoughts.
Maybe I can jump in. Yeah, thank you, Jens, so much for the presentation. I'm really sorry I have to join from my car, so sorry for the noises and the trucks driving by. But anyways, yeah, again, thank you very much. And as Rigmor mentioned, I'm lead of the AI subgroup under the methods group in INSIA. So we've been discussing some of these topics already, but there are also a lot of topics you mentioned that are new to us, or at least that we haven't discussed before. So I'm really looking forward to discussing that in the group as well, just how we can consider this further and what ideas we take from this. Because my understanding is from you, at least, it's still quite open, and you're just like throwing the ball to us and seeing what we think. So what I was curious about is that you talked in the introduction about like applying and how we can go together and apply for some financing. I was just wondering if you have any further thoughts on that aspect and sort of like how you would think an ideal process for applying for financing would look like.
All right, should I try to answer that? So you're exactly right. This is just examples, and any further ideas or saying that idea is dumb, that's perfectly fine right now. So just throw everything up on the table. So I think that should be the first step. Just get all the ideas that we might think are interesting up on the table first, and then I think it would be like good to look around and see, okay, what are people already working on, and where have they gone for, and where can we contribute the most? And then from that that aspect and what we're ourselves are most interested in, prioritize a few ideas and then write the application about those. And then where to apply is a little bit, I don't know, basically. I have like 1 or 2 funders in Denmark that I think we could apply for. But I guess it depends on the funder there. So I think if we're applying in Denmark, then probably VIVE would have to be like the main applicant, and everyone else would be a co-applicant, because I'm not sure. I don't think most funders in Denmark cannot hand out money to public institutions in other countries. I mean, they could do it if they're like co-applicants, but not as the main one. And I guess would think that it's the same thing for most Swedish funders, for example, that I'm also know a little bit about, that then the SBU would have to be the main applicant. And maybe it's the same in other countries, but I don't know so much about that. But yeah, that was just some thoughts on how the process could work.
Excellent, thank you.
Maybe Hans, maybe we could say something about, we had two suggestions on our last AI meeting, and one was maybe we could come together around a statement on the use of AI as a starting point. So that was a suggestion we had, and we also discussed the need of some kind of common document to list ongoing work and whether which of our organizations that are testing which softwares and so on. So that's also a few suggestions.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. That's a good point. It's I think that also plays into what Rigmor mentioned earlier about how just looking at our resources and what we have going on, and if many institutions have the same sort of interests and maybe similar overlapping projects, and there might be easier to collaborate and to do that together. So yeah, that's a very good point. I also was thinking, you mentioned, Jens, about how, if I understood you correctly, at least, that just looking at what has been done already could also be part maybe of the application process, or at least like preparation for the application process. And I was thinking, we have been discussing that in the AI subgroup as well, of how you could perhaps do some sort of review on the existence of existing automation or AI tools, and how that could serve like sort of a basis for how you build on. If there turns out to be hundreds of very good tools for screening, but there are no tools for risk of bias, for instance, then there you go. You have your task laid ahead for you. So that could be one way of going about it, maybe, to use your resources. But as a starting point, for instance, if you just do a small review of that sort of that way. But I'm not suggesting that that's exactly the way we go, but that's one thing we have discussed, at least.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I agree. I think it's necessary to do something of that kind before you do an application, because otherwise it will look kind of weird that, hey, don't you know about all these 15 other research groups that are already doing this? So I think that has to be a part of the application. And then, but the question is maybe how deep do you have to go? But I think what you're talking about, having a list of ongoing things, that would be useful even if we don't do an application. I would love to see such a list, and I would love to contribute to it from what we're doing and what we're aware of and so on. So I think that's a very useful idea, regardless of the application, actually.
Excellent.
I'm trying to be polite and raising my hand, and I absolutely do not mean to hog the conversation here, but great reflections, great questions. So that made, of course, gave me some ideas. And the thing about doing reviews on an AI and evidence synthesis at the moment is that it's developing so incredibly fast that it'll be outdated very quickly. And there already are some reviews, and I'm sure others are in the pipeline. So at least we'll have to consider it carefully which kind of review, if we were to do one, we would want to do. Perhaps as a preparatory work, one thing we could immediately start doing is conjointly INSIA member organizations write a scientific paper on how we have started using AI in our evidence synthesis, which kinds of tools we use, our experiences, when we started, what kind of mandate we had, leadership support, organizational structure, whether we had dedicated teams, whether there were specialists. It'll give us a chance to represent INSIA, our member organizations, and we'll all have to sort of put our foot in the ground and like, okay, where are we now, and how do we compare to other organizations who are somewhat like ourselves? And it wouldn't necessitate a lot of funding, and it would help us prepare the ground for then seeing where might there be gaps, and we would like to apply for funding and do more evaluatory work. Just an idea.
And I'll just throw myself in there and think that sounds like a very good idea, and sort of maybe a bit of a low-hanging fruit because it's work we've already done. And maybe it's an obvious suggestion, but I also think that a good angle to this is because we are INSIA, that we could maybe focus in particular on how we've used this in social welfare interventions work. That could be a way in.
Well,
maybe.
I think would have to come from at it from that perspective, given it is INSIA, and I think it would be interesting as well, because what we're experiencing in this field is that we do have those much larger lists of references to go through, as opposed to a more narrow medical question. So we tend to have much wider scope, and therefore I think the potential of using AI is larger in our field.
I jump also in the conversation. I think that it's a good idea to learn from each other, because I think I was thinking and chatting with colleagues. Does we have something to say about that? Because we test something, we look at those things, we ask other agency which platform you use, in which way, and etc. So it's a good opportunity, I think, to learn from each other. But at the same time, I was wondering if Ines has something to say about that, because we don't have a special teams on that particular matter. Is some colleagues there and there. But it's obvious that we need to really dig on that matter. But that I would be interesting to see from and learn from each of you.
And I think that reflects the reality. We're organizations with some commonalities, but we're at different places. We do slightly different things, and that would be interesting to look closer into, I think, and continue to learn from each other.
I don't know how to raise my hand with Zoom, but I can raise it.
Basically works so well.
I didn't find so I think at HS we are very interested in sharing what's going on. We started to look on what is published, but as you said, when it's published, it's already outdated. So maybe to see which tools are tested where, and on what kind of work with, and sharing all this would be very interesting, I think.
I have one quick question for Jens. Why you choose to develop your own platform? I think it's called AI AIscreenR or something like that. You mentioned a platform, a module, or an algorithm that you use. Why did you choose to develop your own platform? I would call it platform, and not choose something that exists over there in the.
Well, it wasn't really maybe a choice. It was not something that we sat down and just planned to do, but so I think the idea came from one of our researchers that is actually not involved in evidence synthesis. But when ChatGPT came out, he was just, "Ooh, can you use this for apps for screening?" And then we helped him try it. It didn't work. It worked at first, like the first couple of titles, and then just it started hallucinating. And then I think Mikkel, my colleague, he's on parental leave, so he couldn't be here today, but he heard about this trial and he said, "Oh, you shouldn't do it with ChatGPT, not the interface. We should use R, and we should use the API model so we can control what's happening." And then he did that, and it worked very well until they changed models, and then he had to redo the whole program. And but by then I think we've already learned that this could work really well, especially for simple screening tasks. It worked super well already from the start, basically, and now we've done quite a few tests also outside of the paper that it's out on ArcSci, and it works really well. So it was coincidence and that people wanted to go with that idea, basically. And we had some initial promising results, but it wasn't like we sat down and just looked at the field and said, "Hey, we should do something about this," or it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that.
Individual dependent, I will say. You have those people in your organization, so you tried those, because we did the test with ChatGPT and we have a report on that in French, but we used the ChatGPT Pro platform, and you said that with all the platform existing out there, and we choose some, and we tend to stick with that platform. But I was wondering what is the landscape of use, and which platform you use in your organization, or you try or you test in your organization, because ChatGPT is the obvious one, but yesterday I was talking with someone that is reviewing all those platforms, and it's something like 20 big platform and so on. So we choose what the rationale, what is the test that have been made by the organization on those platforms. Why choose this less than the other one? And with the political policy context and judicial context, we may have preferences toward like open source or something like that, more European also based platform.
Right. I think we're in total agreement there that, like, if we were to do this today, we would not choose OpenAI's models for those reasons that you mentioned, and also those that it's not really reproducible. So it's just when we started, or when Mikkel and Julian started, there was only ChatGPT, or there was only OpenAI's available in Denmark, at least. But I think now we would probably use something like Mistral or some open source model, and something that's downloadable that you can run locally. And I think,
Thanks.
yeah.
So the meeting is coming towards an end. What would you, who are here today, like us in the INSIA board and in our communication with Jens to pick up on? What would you like to see us do? How should we take this forward? What are your preferences? What do you think we shouldn't pay any attention to?
Well, I think this conjointly publication or document on ongoing work and what we have done so far, that would be interesting. And maybe also a common statement on the use of AI. Yeah, I think that would be fine.
I agree on the document for sharing what's going on. I think the statement may be much more difficult to achieve, because I'm not sure every members of INSIA are on the same page about this. So yeah, I don't say that we should not do it, but maybe it's more complicated.
Yes.
But maybe, organize a kind of survey about what's going on in all the members, with some questions about which tools, and how far each member is. It would be really very interesting. And from there, maybe see what collaboration we can start about this.
Good suggestion.
Other wishes, requests, ideas? I'm taking notes.
As I said before, Ines would be happy to try to contribute or to discuss of the particular matters, and to share the small tryout that we did the best.
Wonderful to hear. Trying to see what's in the chat. Just very small on my screen. Oh, the sound is not working. Okay, good. Thank you, Anja. That explains. Not saying anything. Right. Okay, we're at time. First, I'd like to thank everybody for being with us today. We need to think together, we need to brainstorm together, we need to create ideas, and then we need to work together. So right now we're in the exploratory phase. We're trying to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? So greatly appreciate Jens in particular for giving us your ideas and pitching this. I feel very strongly we should move forward with this. So anybody from the member organizations have ideas and requests, go ahead and contact either myself or somebody from the secretary, or go through somebody else in your organization who's connected to INSIA, and make sure that the word gets to us so we can take your viewpoints into consideration. We'll need to have some further discussions and talks about how to move this forward. I think it's still a little early to say, but I'd like to say that I can promise we're going to do something, because I really think we should, whether it's small or big, but I'd like to give that promise. And let's see if we can move forward in not a very slow pace, but in a fairly fast-paced. I think this is really, really exciting. So thank you again, everybody, for being with us today, and let's stay in touch.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.